Why some men prefer virgins. There is a common attitude in our culture that sees sexually experienced women as less desirable than sexually inexperienced women. There is shame in having a large body count and a pride in saving yourself for marriage. Women who have had many partners are degraded, called and in many cases pathologized. She must have daddy issues, have a need for male validation, lack self-respect, be the victim of neglect or abuse. On the other hand, women who have very few sexual partners are celebrated. To save oneself for marriage is a virtue. There is something uniquely desirable about having sex with a virgin, and a woman who is selective about who she sleeps with is not only seen as more respectful towards herself, but also more respectful towards the men she has sex with. At first glance, there are two confusing things about this situation. First, this does not appear to be a standard that men are held to. A woman who is a virgin is hot, but a man who is a virgin is an embarrassment. Secondly, most people get better at doing things the more they do them. Wouldn't a virgin be worse at sex than someone with experience? If the pilot of my airplane or my surgeon told me this was her first time, I would feel less confident in her abilities than someone who had been doing it a while. But for some reason, a woman who has never had sex before is supposed to be more qualified than one with some experience? There are some simple explanations for the appeal of virgins. I, for one, am fairly insecure about my sexual abilities. I imagine a woman who has slept with a lot of men would not be very impressed with me, and so I like the idea of having sex with a virgin who would, by definition, have nothing to compare me to. It is also the case that many men don't really respect women as people unconditionally. They value relationships with women primarily because they hope it might lead to sex, and they treat women they hope to have sex with respect because they know failing to will lower their chances of getting laid. A woman in this situation who agrees to sex early in her relationship with such a man is removing the mechanism that grants her respect from him. He got the one thing he wants and no longer has any reason to be respectful. I think these are both good explanations for the reason women who refrain from having too many sexual partners are seen as appealing, and I think there are plenty other similar explanations with equal merit. But these types of explanations don't give any reason why inexperience in and of itself is valuable. They only speak to the consequences of inexperience. If, for instance, I was really confident with my sexual abilities, I might not feel so intimidated by a woman with a lot of experience. If we lived in a culture that didn't shame men for being bad at sex, I might not care so much how the women I'm having sex with feel I stack up. If, for instance, men valued women as people regardless of whether or not they got to have sex with them, then there would be no need to refrain from sex. If women could realistically avoid workplace or social environments where the respect of men mattered at all, then this would also be a non-issue. What I am more interested in asking is what reasons do culture give for sexual inexperience being valuable in and of itself? Is there something that a virgin woman is uniquely able to contribute to a sexual experience that couldn't be achieved through other means? If culture is to be believed, then the answer is yes, they contribute innocence. To understand what I mean by that, we first have to take a step back and examine the roles men and women are assigned in society. Most people would agree that violence is acceptable and even necessary sometimes in a defensive context. If, for instance, someone is attacking you with a knife and kicking that person in the shins would prevent you from being stabbed to death, then it is quite reasonable and possibly necessary to kick that person in the shins. If violence for the sake of self-preservation is acceptable, then it isn't such of a leap to argue that violence on behalf of the defenseless is also permissible. A mother shouldn't be blamed for kicking a man in the shins if that man is going after her infant child with a knife. The child cannot kick hard enough to stop him. Committing acts of violence is perhaps necessary in some contexts, but it is also traumatizing. Someone who is forced to kill might end up psychologically scarred for life. At the very least, he is never the same again. Many violent situations are spontaneous and can't be planned for, but there are circumstances in which we might anticipate a violent confrontation and make decisions accordingly. For instance, imagine a woman who lives alone notices a man lurking in her backyard. She suspects he is stalking her and fears he is going to hurt her. She could ignore the situation or go outside in her pajamas to confront him, but if she suspects it might lead to violence, she would be foolish not to arm herself with a knife, pepper spray, or gun. Or she could call the cops and have them confront him on her behalf. Maybe she fears she will be incapable of performing the defensive violence this situation demands of her, either because she will be overpowered or because she is too pacifistic to pull the trigger. Perhaps she fears the permanent psychological trauma hurting someone will cause her and feels having someone do it on her behalf will be less trauma-inducing. And of course, this is what the police are for. They are the boys with guns that do the dirty work of violence on your behalf. This woman has been told from an early age to call 911 if she spots nefarious strangers lurking in the shadows. There is a good chance that if she confronts this man herself and lives to tell the tale, she will be told she should have let the professionals deal with it and reprimanded for going against the social order. The belief is that some people are better suited for doing the labor of violence than others, and whomever is best suited should do the violent thing in any given situation. Who is most apt to act violently is fluid and contingent on factors such as age, experience, race, or physical strength. A father might defend his infant son against a bear, and later, when he is old and frail and the son is strong and manly, the roles get reversed. But there is one factor that seems to trump everything when it comes to who is expected to do the violence. If a man is present, then it is his job. It doesn't matter if the woman is a current heavyweight boxing champion and the man just got his gallbladder removed and is still feeling loopy from the general anesthesia. If word gets out that you were mugged on the walk home and the woman kicked the mugger's ass while the man stood by idly, he will be mocked and considered a failure, an embarrassment of a man. The truth is, many people see one's ability to act violently as essential to manhood. A boy becomes a man the day he shoots a gun for the first time, or the first time he gets in a physical altercation with a bully. If a man fails to stand up for himself or others through acts of violence, it is considered emasculating, and people will say he is not a real man. This was drilled into me from an early age. People act as if violent assailants are lurking around every corner, and I must exist in a state of perpetual readiness, always prepared to leap into violent action to protect my wife and children. Society as we know it is under attack from every angle, and if not for men and their guns, we would surely be in a state of godless chaos by now. The job of a man is society's existential preservation, and it is an important one indeed. But acting violently is traumatizing, and it is hard on the soul. How can we be sure our country's men are up to the task? How can we be sure they won't falter and fail to pull the trigger when it is required of them? A pure and innocent soul that shudders at the thought of doing violence is only an obstacle when a person possesses a pure and innocent soul. A man who suffers a great loss and tragedy and trauma becomes disillusioned with the world. He loses his innocence and gains the ability to commit acts of violence. What emerges is a ridiculous and diabolical system of violence and trauma. There's a notion that being happy and being sufficiently disillusioned with the world are incompatible. The expectation is that if you really understood how cruel and messed up the world is, you'd be moping around like Batman all the time. Now there was a guy who could really beat people up. If you seem enthusiastic for life, peppy, and with zeal, you're clearly not the kind of man who could protect your wife. Men often harass and assault other men around them who seem a bit too happy. This serves several purposes. First of all, it is traumatizing to the men they beat up, but remember, trauma is considered necessary character building, so really you're doing them a favor. Second of all, it is an opportunity to practice being violent. You don't want to be soft yourself, and assaulting other men is a good way to desensitize yourself to acting violently. It also telegraphs your competence as a violence doer to those around you. Finally, in the worst case scenario, the man you are assaulting is soft because he doesn't believe in this culture of violence, not because he hasn't been traumatized. Men like that threaten to turn us all soft, which would lead to total societal collapse. They are dangerous and deserve what they get. You end up with a bunch of depressed, cynical, violent men who are afraid of their own happiness and have years' worth of unprocessed trauma, every girl's wet dream. Men who have been conditioned to think like this see their own unhappiness as a virtue. In their minds, they have sacrificed their own well-being for the sake of protecting and preserving the innocence of others. It's nearly impossible to convince someone with this mindset to critically examine their thinking because they are under the false belief that anyone who disagrees with them is missing the crucial knowledge of the world's cruelty. Other people are naive, and their naivety is enabled and protected by the sacrifices of all the real men who are mopey and violent. By questioning this man's thinking, you are demonstrating your own naivety, which, if anything, proves how effective the men in society are at protecting people's innocence. Men aren't allowed happiness for themselves, but they are allowed a kind of vicarious happiness. The thinking goes, a woman who is still innocent, who possesses a childlike wonder at the world, who is naive and sheltered, she is capable of feeling genuine joy. A man who is her companion is capable of experiencing this joy vicariously through her. She will hold up a rock and say, "Isn't it beautiful?" or something, and for a moment he will see the rock as beautiful. A man who has a woman like this in his life can also feel reassured of his own value and virtue. When she expresses naive joy, he can feel secure in the fact that he is succeeding in his role as a man. He is protecting her. He has something to protect. This is the exchange that makes up heterosexual partnership. The man is the caretaker, protecting the woman from experiencing the cruelness of the world, keeping her innocent and naive. In return, she expresses joy and life and wonder, and the man can experience those things vicariously. A woman's value is therefore her innocence and naivety, and it is permanently lost if she ever becomes disillusioned with the world. It is fallaciously believed by many that women are incapable of becoming violent guardians of society. A traumatized boy becomes a man, but a traumatized woman becomes worthless. She can no longer provide naive joy, but she could never become a man either. For men who think like this, heterosexual intercourse serves several functions. It is first and foremost a method by which a man might experience a woman's innocence vicariously. Her body and her sex is pure, untouched by the world and its cruelty. Sex is pleasurable, and perhaps that is due to the woman's innocence. Sex is also the primary way the woman can validate the man. By having sex with him, she is communicating that she feels he has satisfied his responsibilities. He is protecting her and keeping her innocent and naive. He can never accept himself because he knows his own wickedness. It is that self-knowledge that enables him to act violently. He cannot love or accept himself because he must remain hypervigilant. But he is deserving of love and acceptance. The woman who has sex with him offers him this love and acceptance he deserves. But sex is also a form of ritualized violence. The woman and her body is an object that the man uses for his own self-actualization and gratification. Sex is seen as degrading, dehumanizing, humiliating towards the woman. The sex act itself can never be a mutual exchange between two equals because the woman is the thing being acted upon. It is her innocence that he is taking through the sex act. She may experience pleasure, but it is the pleasure of her own degradation. Perhaps sex is a sin, but like the violence the man commits outside of sex, it is a necessary evil. He has forfeited his own humanity and innocence. He has dismembered his ability to feel joy. He has done so to preserve the naivety of the woman. He is entitled to the vicarious innocence and acceptance sex provides him with. The woman may be degraded, but her innocence and naivety prevents her from comprehending this. Her degradation is private and controlled. Only he knows of it. It is one of the many burdens he will carry. A man who believes this will naturally value a virgin woman. The more men she's had sex with, the more men have degraded her. The less innocent she is, the less her acceptance matters because she isn't as pure and naive. A woman who likes having sex and has had it with many people is even worse. She is traumatized. She is aware of the violent nature of the world. She cannot contribute naive joy. She enjoys her own degradation. The sex she offers men is empty and meaningless because it cannot provide him with confirmation of his success in keeping her innocent. She was already corrupted from the start. It is a truly reprehensible view to have of women, infantilizing, disparaging, dehumanizing, but even more tragically, it's a terrible view to have of yourself. Imagine experiencing years of verbal and physical abuse, not being able to feel joy, knowing that you are corrupt and wicked, and seeing it all as necessary and honorable. Imagine feeling disgusted with yourself when you have sex with your girlfriend because you know you have defiled her. Imagine knowing that the woman you love will never understand you, cannot understand you, mustn't understand you. In almost all ways, it is one of the saddest and least appealing worldviews to hold, but there are two very attractive things about it. Believing this gives meaning to your suffering. If you are a man and you've grown up in a constant state of violence and loneliness and isolation, it's very painful to imagine it was all meaningless. Men who have had the joy beat out of them for years have a very hard time learning to express joy again. They self-regulate and self-punish. Imagine all the time you've spent hating and disparaging yourself was actually a sign of trauma and weakness, not strength. Imagine being unable to do anything other than view yourself as a monster because it was the only mirror you've ever been given, and knowing it's the wrong thing to do and being unable to do otherwise. Wouldn't it be better to believe you sacrificed your own happiness for a greater good? The second very attractive thing about this belief system is that it explains away any and all criticisms. You are the defender of the world. Your suffering has enabled others to live carefree lives. They are naive, which is good, but it renders any criticisms they have of your worldview meaningless. You are immune to critics. It may be an attractive worldview to some, but that doesn't make it true. The sad truth is that women are subjected to similar forms of policing violence as men, albeit for different reasons. A woman is just as likely as a man to be traumatized, and the idea that a woman is able to achieve joy or happiness because of naivety is ridiculous. Women are people. They are capable of committing horrible acts of violence. They are able to hate others. They are capable of self-hatred. No human person is untouched by the cruelness of the world. A woman who is happy, joyful, full of wonder isn't those things because she's been untouched by trauma. It is possible to be both traumatized and joyful. Men fall victim to a lie that sees unhappiness and wisdom as being one and the same. They assume their unhappiness is evidence of their wisdom and therefore proof of their value. A man fears his own joy, so he projects it onto the woman he has sex with. He resents her for having what he cannot. He assumes joy is only achievable through ignorance, so he imagines her to be ignorant. The woman can choose to participate in the charade of naivety or try and reject it. It doesn't matter because he assumes she cannot understand him and will see what he wants. One day, he will realize she was never as innocent as he thought she was. He will call her and because he feels the sex they've had was illegitimate. He will continue through life believing no one will ever feel his pain. He will continue to assault effeminate men. Thanks for watching. The uncensored version of this video is available on Patreon. If you liked the video, consider subscribing and sharing it with your friends. If you have any questions, feedback, or video ideas, feel free to email me at EssaysAboutSex@protonmail.com.